it does appear that everything that comes up in life somehow comes out in music. So your path as a musician, if you really take it seriously, it becomes a life path.
Yes.
You know, welcome to this episode of The Music of Life. I'm your host, Stanley Jordan. Today, we feature a conversation with one of the finest jazz guitarists of our time, Mimi Fox. Mimi has taught at Yale, Berklee College of Music, and NYU, and she's led the guitar department at California Jazz Conservatory. She's worked with many other great artists, including Charlie Byrd, Kenny Burrell, Jim Hall, Joey DeFrancesco, and Branford Marsalis. The preceding clip was from a jam with Mimi and me performing together sometime around 2009. And since then, we've kept in touch and we played together here and there, but we finally got our first serious booked engagement together, a multi-night run at Washington, D.C.'s Blues Alley Jazz Club in April 2023. This conversation was recorded in advance of that gig. Wow, so I'm so glad we're going to be playing together again.
I know, me too. I'm totally stoked.
Yeah, I told so many people about our collaborations before. There was the thing at that was Muriel Anderson's event, right? The All-Star
Oh, the
Guitar
yeah,
Night.
All-Star Guitar Night at NAMM.
Yeah. There was another thing with just you and me. I found it on YouTube, just playing at a booth somewhere. I think it was also at NAMM.
That was at NAMM too. And
Okay.
then we've done a few other things. I think when you were out in the Bay Area and I was in town, we played at Yoshi's at your show at Yoshi.
Yoshi's, yeah, that was so much fun.
And
Yeah.
that was fun. And then we've tried over the years to do some other things and it just, the stars didn't align. So
Hmm.
I'm really glad they have aligned for this.
I'm really glad too because I was talking with the folks at Blues Alley about putting this together, and we all wanted to do something really special, like something because I played there for years. It's been my most loyal venue for my
Mm.
whole career, and we wanted to do something really special. And one of the things that Harry had mentioned was doing some kind of a collaboration. And I gave him a list of people, and I wanted to leave it open because I didn't know who, they would think was a winner. So I just said, pick anyone from this list. But you were my favorite one.
Oh,
And I'm
shit.
and when he told me that you were gonna do it, I was just so excited, like, yes.
I know. I'm so excited because I feel like when we've played together, it's really had it's had that magical I think the French say je ne sais quoi. It's had that
Hmm.
special something because we
Hmm.
just have a musical chemistry. And it's, there's
Hmm.
so many great players, but you
Hmm.
can be a great player, but it doesn't mean that you're going to have a certain kind of fit together, and
Right, right.
I feel like from the downbeat or the upbeat or any part of the beat that we started on, we always had this kind of really nice connection, a really good
Hmm.
energy. And
Yes, really good energy.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm
So,
so
and I know you've performed with a lot of people and just jammed with a lot of people. Like, what are some of the things that you look for in a collaboration?
To me, it's so funny, Stanley, because I think that for guitar fans of people like yourself and me, they get very focused on the technique and all the
Uh-huh.
stuff that we're doing, and
Hmm.
particularly for you with your, really singular style. But I think also for me, if I do harmonics and different things, people are like, oh, but for me, it's all about this. It's all about our heart. And I feel like, really, from the moment that I met you, I feel that you know, anyway, in answer to your question, what I look for in a collaborator is someone that's gonna put their heart into everything, every note,
Mm.
every song,
Mm-hmm.
every phrase.
Mm-hmm.
Is this there? Because,
Mm-hmm.
everything that we do, all the years of practicing, all the years of shows, all the touring, everything that we've done, it really doesn't mean anything if we're not connected to each other, and then the audience can't connect with us.
Mm.
So to me,
So
I don't
true.
know. What about you? What do you look for in a collaborator?
Yeah, this may sound strange, but one of the things that I really watch for is how people move. Like when I'm playing with people and I look at their body language on stage and I try to match the body language. It's like a choreography, it's like a dance. Because I feel like if we're dancing together and we're in sync, just kind of just on a vibological, energetic level. I don't know how else to say it, but I just feel like whatever we play is going to fit,
Yeah, yeah.
And so sometimes I'm just watching and I'm just like really, it's almost like I'm out of my body and I'm watching, like if I were a fly on the wall watching the whole thing, what would I see? Does the whole thing look like it's a connection and they're having fun, And of course, there's always the technical stuff too. Like you want to have somebody who musically is going to go to places where you would like to go, and that doesn't always work, Like I know people who are really fantastic musicians, but I don't really feel a desire to play with them.
Well, that's what I was saying. To me, I mean, I think maybe we may be saying some of the same things in a different way, because I talk about the heart, but you're talking about dancing and having that connection.
Mm-hmm.
And and yes, I've met some incredible players. Like you, I've had the opportunity to play with so many, great musicians in my
Mm-hmm.
career. But then it's the people that touch me in my heart, and also the people
Mm-hmm.
that you want to dance with, because you can feel like they're simpatico, and
Mm-hmm.
that's really, I mean, I I don't know any other way to say it, but I like that you use the word vibological. That was pretty cool. I don't know if that is a word, but it should be. It's a Stanleyism.
I'm a vibologist. I've come to the conclusion.
Definitely,
Like,
definitely.
there's going to be some situation where all hell is broken loose and I'll be able to say, "Excuse me, I'm a vibologist. I can handle this, Step aside. I got this."
I love it. I love it. I love it.
But like just thinking about collaborations, and there's people I would like to collaborate with that I haven't had the opportunity yet. Some bucket list people. Like one for sure would have to be George Benson. George was such a influence for me, and recently I came across a YouTube of him from back in the 70s doing Take 5. I'm just like, "Oh my god, just
I know that video because I've seen it. Yeah.
and I mean, Pat Martino, we didn't have a chance to actually play together, but another one of my favorites. And actually, I was at an event with a lot of different guitar players, and when George took the stage, I was backstage with Pat Martino watching, and we were both like looking at each other, just shaking our heads, like, "Oh my god," he was
I
just.
know. Well, I'm with you on that. George is kind of, if you're a vibologist, he's kind of otherworldly. They're just
Hmm.
sort of, I don't know. I have some, I feel like when, talking about George, I've two other, friends that are incredible players that I think come out of the very much heavy Benson influence. One of them,
Mm.
I don't know if you know Henry Johnson
Oh,
from
sure, yeah.
Chicago, but
In fact,
Henry,
we played together. He played at my sister's wedding in
ha,
Chicago.
okay, so yeah, and Henry and I have played together over the years, and we've done
Oh.
some different things. And
Hmm.
I love Henry because to me, Henry has that combination, like George, of the incredible chops and the mind
Hmm.
and the understanding
Right,
of
right.
jazz.
You can hear the influence from George, but he's
Yes,
definitely got his own thing.
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, he does not. He's got his own thing, and he's also a really funny guy. And I mean, he's like a brother to me. We've become very good friends over the years, and whenever we talk, I think we're going to just talk for 20 minutes, and then it's 2 hours have gone by. I mean, he's just that kind of guy. I feel like
Hmm.
I could talk to him forever, and he's wonderful. So,
Mm.
I was actually supposed to do, God, I don't know, this was maybe 5, 10 years ago. It was had to be about 10 years ago. I was going to do a few shows with Pat up at Jazz Alley, another alley, not
Wow.
Blues Alley, but Jazz Alley in Seattle,
Yeah.
which I'm sure you've played. And
I'll
I
be there
couldn't,
this summer, in fact.
yeah, I
Mhm.
couldn't do it because I had a touring conflict and was going to be in
Mm,
Europe, and so I was unable to do it, and it was really, I was so bummed about it. But
mhm,
I had the opportunity to meet and hang with Pat at different, different times, and
mhm,
certainly that was,
mhm,
transformative. So I know
mhm.
what you're talking about.
And that fluid style of his, like I remember the first time I heard Sonny, everyone knows
Yeah, yeah,
Sonny. And I mean, it reminded me of that same kind of the fluidity like Bud Powell. He just goes and goes and goes.
yeah,
And you keep following him, and it's just the ability to play like that, the linear style where it's like all, eighth notes or sixteenths or whatever,
right.
but still be melodic. It's
Yeah.
not like a machine gun. It's just
Well, also, what I love about Pat, I don't know how you feel, Stanley, but I think all of the players that we're talking about, and I would say you and I too, there's a anchor, and the anchor is the blues, and I think
mm,
for me with
mm-hmm,
Pat, even he would do
mm-hmm.
these long, linear, very dense phrases and then go into a blues riff.
Yeah,
That would be,
yes, yes.
and he'd hang on that riff for like, will seem like forever. You're like, you're still there, man. And he's still going. And to me, but that's also, Pat was very influenced by Wes. And, I
Mm-hmm.
just did, I had one of the times of my life, Stanley, recently. I was interviewed, for this documentary on Wes that was put together.
Wow.
And I met Wes's son, Robert
Oh,
Montgomery, who still lives in Indianapolis.
really?
Yeah, and through the process, Robert interviewed me on Zoom, and we had this
Mm,
great interview, which is part of it is in the film, in the documentary. But when you talk about these fluid lines that go on forever, and very
mm-hmm,
different than Pat, of course, but
mm-hmm,
um, you know, and such a strong rhythmic drive, and just with a thumb,
mm,
and
mm.
one little unadulterated thumb. But I think about Wes, and anyway, I played out in Indianapolis for a celebration for Wes's. This is the centennial of Wes and
Oh,
his
wow. I
birth.
didn't know.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
and so I was really happy to be a part of that. And I played at the Jazz Kitchen in Indianapolis, and
Uh-huh.
Robert came down with his whole family, and so I hadn't gotten a chance to meet him yet. But when he came down, I did get a chance to hang, and he's just such a sweetheart. And I think this. He's trying to, I think through the documentary, just bringing much more attention to his dad, who
I
died
see.
when Robert was only 6 years old
I see.
when Wes died.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so
I got a chance to play with Wes's brother, Buddy Montgomery. Let's see, we played in Wisconsin. I think we did one show in Indianapolis.
yeah, yeah,
And also I met his other brother, Monk. Um, but man, just the legends that have taught us through the years. There's a famous quote from Einstein where he said, "If I see farther than most, it's because I stand on the shoulders of giants."
yes,
And
yes,
I love that, and I love that in your playing as well, because I hear so many different influences of people, and yet you have your own thing too.
oh,
And
thank you, Steve.
so it's like I feel like so many people who I've loved through the years are lost now, and people I've played with for many many years,
I
they're
know.
gone, and I just feel like all the people in our lives, all these opportunities are so precious.
Yes,
We were talking about Jazz Alley. Just a couple of years ago, I played at Jazz Alley opposite Joey DiFrancesco. And I was so happy to catch up with him because he was on my really short bucket list of people like, for sure, let's do something. Like my
yeah,
top two or three people, like, who do I want to collaborate with next? He was
right.
like way up at the top of that list. So I mean, I'm glad I got a chance to catch up with him, but it's just a reminder that every moment is precious.
I had the opportunity. Joey actually played on an early recording of mine for Monarch Records, and then called
Wow.
me to do a tour in California with him
Hmm.
years ago. And I have the photos from that. We have the music, of course, but I have the photos, which,
Hmm.
after Joey passed, I took out and looked at all
Hmm.
of them, and it just,
Hmm.
yeah. And speaking of I was just thinking when you said Jazz Alley, talking
Hmm.
about some of the folks that passed. I did a week run and a double bill there with Charlie Bird before he
Wow.
passed. And
Hmm.
so, you're so right, Stanley. These
Hmm.
moments, and you and I have talked so much about doing shows together, doing collaborating, and now to have this opportunity at Blues Alley,
Hmm.
we don't know what's going to happen. It's very
Yeah.
exciting because I feel like
Hmm.
there's this edgy excitement that happens where it's
Hmm.
like, we're going to see what we put together and come up
Hmm.
with. And, it's always really exciting.
Hmm. With this gig, I have this feeling like, oh shit, I better practice for this one. And so I love that, you know.
Yeah.
I love the fact that this is a gig that brings me to the woodshed because I know that you're going to bring your A game, and your playing is just so on point. It's just so wonderful, and so it's like I love the challenge of keeping up with you and playing with you. You know, it's not
Well,
like one of those like sleepy gigs. You know,
no, I haven't been known for being a sleepy kind of gal. That's true.
no, no.
But thank you, Stanley. I can't even. I don't know if you can see it on Zoom. I can feel my face getting hot. It feels to start blushing. But you know, I feel the same way about playing with you. I feel like there is. You surprise me. One of the things I love about your playing, and I love about you as a person, for that matter, when we've had a chance to hang, is that you surprise me. You surprise me with things, and there is never, and you never mail it in. There is no mailing in with you. It's like we are there in the moment
Hmm.
as the
Yeah, thank you.
as a vibologist and
Uh-huh.
a vibologist to be, perhaps. And so, we are there together in the moment, creating something, and it's never going to be the same again. We could play that same
Hmm.
tune the next night, the next set, the next year. It's going to be different.
Well, and I think this is one of the reasons why I think that you're an especially good choice for this collaboration for this gig. Because what we're doing is a residency where I'm doing different formats. And I'm encouraging people to come back and see different shows because it's going to be different. So even if they see us more than once, it's going to be a different show.
That's right.
So the first night I'm doing solo, and then the next two nights it's our duo. And then the final two nights, it's my Hendrix tribute, my Stanley Plays Jimmy show.
Oh, that's
So
cool.
it's a whole other thing.
I know. I wish I could
Man.
stay for it, but I had to head
Mm,
back to San Francisco from DC.
mhm,
Oh man, I wish
mm.
I would love to hear that. I would love to hear that.
And I love that too because, Jimmy was another big influence on mine. And he was one of the people who got me into jazz, in fact, because there was a period I was listening to jazz, but I didn't have a way in. I didn't know, my ears didn't just pick it up, and I didn't understand how to just jump right in. And at first, I didn't have a teacher to help me get there. And so Jimmy kind of pointed the way because he was reaching for some new things.
Yes.
And one of my favorite albums of his was Nine to the Universe. So it's basically like sort of studio jams. I don't know what he was planning to do with that stuff or not, but
Right.
it was some late stage stuff that showed some of the things that he was reaching for. And
Right.
that was really influential for me as well. The time that I'm talking about is because I grew up in the Bay Area, like in the late 60s and the early 70s. So place and time was just, I just feel so blessed for that upbringing. And I remember that at that time, what people were doing was pushing the envelope. And part of the purpose of a musician was to challenge convention and to get people to think in a new way. And I remember my teacher, we were hanging out with his niece who had seen Miles. Miles came to San Francisco, and she said, "Man, Miles played in the city, and he turned the whole city upside down." And just like just that concept that a musician is somebody who moves history forward
That's right.
by shocking people out of their old ways of thinking. I think that they gave Prince a really good send off. Like CNN and a lot of the media did a lot of good stuff about Prince, but a lot of the stuff that they said about Prince, you could say about a lot of the other musicians. It's like that same concept of being the one who's like trying to move things forward. And so, Jimmy was one of those people for me, even though I never got to see him play, but that seed was planted. I was actually a piano player when I first got the news that he had passed away. And I remember exactly where I was too. It was a doctor's appointment, and I was sitting in the waiting room, and I just picked up some magazines, and I saw in a magazine Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin. I was like, oh shit, and I was like, we have to do what we can do to pick up the torch. And that was the moment that I decided, okay, I'm playing guitar. I had wanted to already, but that's the moment I totally made up my mind that I'm
Yeah.
going to play guitar.
Yes, yes. Well, I mean, and Jimmy, in every genre, there are players that push the envelope that are innovators. And it's
Mhm,
regardless of whether it's rock or pop or funk or blues or jazz, you know, there or symphonic or chamber music. There's always
mhm,
these people that are reaching, and
mhm,
certainly Jimmy was one of those. So that's really cool. That's really cool. I mean,
mhm,
I like for me as a player and composer, I like to see what I can dig out of music that people have already heard and try to
mhm,
put my own stamp on it.
mhm,
And so,
mhm.
I've taken Billie Holiday's music and tried to get her vocal inflections into my
Ooh,
playing. I've
wow.
taken,
That explains a lot. I'm glad
yeah,
you shared
yeah.
that.
Well,
I think I understand your concept even more just from what you just said.
yeah, yeah. Because the biggest compliment that someone can give me as an instrumentalist is she plays lyrically. So
Mhm,
I think of the vocalists, the
mhm,
great vocalists, not just in jazz, but
mhm,
particularly in jazz that have impacted me. And it could be
mhm,
Sarah Vaughan or Ella or Billy. There's so many
mhm.
great vocal artists. I try to Eddie Jefferson. So many people
Oh,
pop into my
mhm,
head that I just
mhm,
love. Um, and I try to get that vocal inflection when I'm playing,
mhm,
because that's to me that's all about the connecting, and
mhm,
it goes back to what you were saying, Stanley, about the dance.
mhm,
Are we dancing? Are we sort of floating together? And for me, about the heart, it's all it's sort of that. It's all sort of connected. It's all
mhm,
connected. So
mhm, mhm.
um, I'm totally with you, and I
Mhm,
think, I mean, if to me, if the song has a beautiful melody, that's part of why I love so much of the Beatles stuff, because it
mhm,
has such great melodies. I mean,
mhm,
whether it's Blackbird or And I Love Her or She's Leaving
mhm,
Home, or In My
mhm,
Life, these
mhm,
are beautiful melodies, and they stand up. Blackbird is AABA, just like Skylark, and it's
mhm,
just a beautiful song. And so, great composers give us all this stuff to do. And so, whether it's Jimmy or Cole Porter or Paul McCartney, or Billie
mhm,
Holiday is a great vocalist,
mhm.
it's all great music.
Wow. Yeah, and I guess, the first instruments were vocals and drums. I mean, it's probably how people started out
Yeah,
making
and the
music.
heartbeat, the
The
heartbeat,
heart, right. And
right?
I always tell my students to sing, and if I have a student who's an instrumentalist, I say, I don't care, you have to sing. Whether or not you're going to perform singing, you
Right.
have to cultivate your voice because that's going to develop your ear and it's going to make that connection. And another great name that comes to mind in this, what we're talking about, is Herb Ellis. There's a couple of things that he said. One thing is, I remember him talking about respecting the melody of a song. And I tested this. Like, I took a song that he played, and then I took his solo and I played the melody against his solo. And his solo totally fit the melody and totally
Was
complemented
it, you mean like the rhythmic, the contour of the solo, the shape of
it.
it?
Just the counterpoint. It just made like beautiful counterpoint. It wasn't the melody, but you could play the melody and it was totally compatible.
That's so funny you say that, because I'm a freak for having my students know the lyrics of all of these,
Yes,
all of
thank
the
you.
song
Thank
songs,
you.
because they come to me and they want to play Autumn Leaves, with distortion and all this other stuff. I'm like, I'm cool, man, that's cool,
Hmm.
whatever you want to
Uh-huh.
do. But do you know the tune? What did Johnny Mercer write? What is going on here? what is going, and it's like, I know the lyrics to every one of these songs.
Wow.
I don't happen to be blessed with a great voice, and I've been fortunate to play with some great vocalists in my life, so they can do the singing, but I know the lyrics to every one of those
Mm.
songs. And to
Mm-hmm.
me, that's about understanding, going deep inside the song. And in my head, no matter what I might be playing over Autumn Leaves, I'm always hearing the falling
Mm-hmm.
leaves drift by my window,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
the autumn leaves of red and gold.
Wow.
I see your
Mm.
face, the summer kisses, the sunburned hands I used to hold. And I
Cool.
might be
Uh-huh.
playing, "Nya, broom, ba, beat up, bidoo," but I'm hearing
Wow.
that in
Mm-hmm.
my head.
I remember one time when I was like, I don't know, 16 or 17, and I was practicing The Shadow of Your Smile. And my sister walked in the room. She said, "What song are you playing?" And I said, "That's just Shadow of Your Smile." She said, "No, it's not." And I said, "Oh, what do you know? You've got no ear. I'm embellishing the harmony. This is jazz. What do you know about jazz?" And she said, "No, that's not the shadow of your smile. The shadow of your smile is this wistful, longing lament of a bittersweet memory of a love affair from the summer, or something like." So
Yeah.
he
So
gave this
she did know what
beautiful,
she did
he
know.
gave this beautiful description of what the song was about, and I was like, "Oh, like
Yeah.
okay, yeah, I see
Yeah.
what you mean, yeah."
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
what I did had nothing to do with that.
Right. And she knew it. She felt
Mhm.
it.
Right. But on the other hand, there's also, let's say, like Eleanor Rigby. So I've been criticized for my version of Eleanor Rigby. Like sometimes people will say, "Well, that's not even the same song. I can barely recognize it," or it's too fast, or it's too manic, or whatever. But most of these people are young people who weren't even around. And I remember when that song was a hit on the radio,
Yes.
and I related to it because I was going through my own things at the time, and I could relate to the loneliness. But I was feeling loneliness not so much as like a more sort of somber, sort of brooding emotion with irony or whatever. I felt it more like more of a pent up, explosive emotion, and even a sense of almost like desperation. And so I play the song from my own way of relating to the meaning. So I go back not so much to the way that the Beatles did the song, but to my interpretation of the lyrics.
Well, and look, the Beatles already did the song, and that was perfect within what they did. They wrote the
Mm-hmm.
song, that's fine. But that's our job. This come back to pushing the envelope, Stanley. That's our job
Mm-hmm.
as artists, is to take it. We should do this maybe at Blues Alley, but I have a pretty trippy version of Eleanor Rigby too.
Oh, really?
Maybe we should both. Maybe you could do
Oh,
yours,
yeah.
and I could do mine, and people will be like, "Oh my God, I don't know that I never heard Eleanor Rigby that way."
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, that's what it's about, is
Mm-hmm.
we're supposed to be taking it and finding something fresh.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
So, we're going to work out some things, of course, but the real magic is just what happens when we get up there.
that's right.
you
That's
know. And I remember at Miles Davis's memorial, and Herbie Hancock was saying that Miles was advising one of the musicians in his band not to work so much stuff out, but just to get up there on stage and
and go
make it
for it.
happen in the moment. Well, he was the musician that Miles was talking to.
That's
And this is one of the things that I'm really trying to emphasize. And sometimes it means being on the spot, and sometimes the experiment fails. But after a while, you kind of get a thick skin about it. I think things are a little different. I think with younger people now, and even not so young, but just if you've grown up in the internet age, I think that might change things a little bit because everything is recorded, and so you're never just playing a show. You're making a YouTube video because somebody's
right.
gonna, with a shitty cell phone, is gonna make a lo-fi video of it,
Right.
and who knows which part of the show they're gonna post. If
Right.
maybe
Right.
they're gonna find the one part where like you made this big fat whopping mistake, and they're gonna put that, and they're gonna put the exact time code, like listen right there. And so that's kind of the world that we're in right now. And
It is.
sometimes
Yeah, it's
I
true.
usually don't worry about it, but sometimes I have to jump in it and I have to say on the comments, like, look, you guys, I didn't do this for you. I did this for the people who were there at that moment.
We're in the business of creating art, and art is not an athletic event. I always tell my students, art is not about. First of all, you can never be the baddest, out there. There's always going to be someone that's got something, and I
Hmm.
just think, it's about being authentic, about telling our story, our truth at any moment in time. And if
Hmm.
people don't like it, like you said, move on. Have a nice day, whatever. It's our music, and we're the creators. So
Hmm.
we're just we're giving it up. And I think a lot of people maybe are not aware of how much goes into what we do, so that by the time we step on stage together, you know it's like there's a lot that goes into making us who we are, who we've
Hmm.
become as
Hmm.
human beings,
Yeah,
our
a good
humanity,
point. Uh-huh.
right? Our humanity, and also our musicality.
Hmm. I mean, at this point, I've got it down to where I have like a whole procedure to prepare. And if I do my procedure, I can pretty much guarantee that I'm going to be happy with the show. The
Right.
challenge is being able to actually do the procedure, because on the road, realistically, it doesn't
Yeah,
always work like that. Do
sure.
I have the hours to practice that I would like to have?
Right.
Like, no, or, maybe something happened before I got on stage. I found out some weird news or something, and I have to kind of shake that off, but I don't have time. Maybe I could do like a deep progressive relaxation or something, but I don't have time. So I got to figure out how to bring that to the stage with me and fuel the show with that energy, even if there's some
It's,
toxicity there,
yeah.
but still not put the toxicity into the audience. Turn
No,
it
you
into something beautiful and magical, but still play off the energy of it. It's tricky.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think, you've heard about different, and it might have been Miles or some of the people in the group, but, times where musicians, like, you wonder why they're rushing so much on this version of something, a 7-step 7. Why is it rushing? Well, maybe because ahead of time the club owner said, listen, guys, I don't have as much to pay you tonight. And so they were really pissed off, but they got to get on stage and do it. So maybe they're like really digging in,
Hmm.
and, that's okay, but I think, yeah, I mean, I have what I call this sort of inner musician that has to take over so that I can tune out all the extraneous stuff,
Hmm.
so that when I get on stage I can just share with everybody from a really authentic deep place, and
Hmm.
get and sort of like I had to be like a horse with the blinders on, and just sort of breathe into myself as who I am as an inner musician. That's where all our years of study and playing, come into play. And that's what I try to do in those situations, because
Hmm.
yeah, it's hard. I I could get off the phone with my manager and something happened and some weird things going on, and I just have to, you know,
Hmm. Well, I also think, just music. I mean, this is something that I realized more from studying music therapy. So, in the music therapy world, we connect the music to a lot of other aspects of life. And that to me, just separate from the therapeutic side of it, but just all the different ways that you connect music to life in general was one of the most useful things that I've gotten from that study. And it does appear that everything that comes up in life somehow comes out in music. So your path as a musician, if you really take it seriously, it becomes a life path.
yes.
Right? Like
Yeah,
so
I
many.
mean, it's inseparable. It's inextricably linked with who we are as people and everything that happens to us.
Right. And so there may be something you're trying to get to with your music, and you practice it and it's still not there, and you find out that the thing that's really holding you back is not that you didn't practice enough hours or that you didn't change your strings or something like that. Maybe you didn't get enough sleep, or maybe your mind was distracted,
Right, right.
or maybe you brought the wrong energy to it or something. You know, maybe the food that you eat could be a factor. I mean, so many things become a factor. So you find that you have to upgrade your life condition, right?
Yes,
In
yes,
order to get to the music that you want. And so
yeah,
in that way, the music helps your life, and then your life helps your music.
yeah, yeah. Well put, well put.
Hmm.
From the master vibologist.
There should be a that should be a profession. Oh,
Well, you
I'm
could
sorry. Sorry, I gotta go. I'm late for to see my vibologist.
absolutely, absolutely. Well, you can be the first one to hang out a shingle for it, Stanley.
Oh
Stanley
man.
Jordan, master musician slash vibologist.
Okay, I'll do it. Oh man, I'm loving talking with you so much. I know you have to get ready for a tour. Just briefly before I see you, what are some of the places where are you going before
Well,
I
I'm
see you?
going to. I have a gig in Tulsa, and then Tulsa, Oklahoma, McKinney, Texas. Then I'm doing a master class at North State, Texas, and then I've got two things in Austin, and then I'm flying to DC to be with my
Wow.
buddy,
Wow.
to be
Okay,
with
so
my
you got a
friend and master
full
vibe.
schedule. So you'll be warmed up by the time you get there, I'm sure.
I hope so. I hope so.
And the key, I guess, is to be warmed up, but not tired. So I
Exactly.
hope that you find some good rest and relaxation along the way.
Thank you, Stanley. And I look forward to it. And we'll have fun and, hopefully, create some good vibes and some magic, a little bit of magic.
Mimi, from the heart, I love you so much. It's going to be wonderful.
You too,
I'm
Stanley.
so looking forward to it.
Me too. Me too.